Welcome, folks, to Lehigh Valley Time Travelers. I'm Grover Silcox,
My name is Mark Iam-Petro.
and we're just a couple of history lovers. Should we call ourselves history buffs, Mark?
Yes, I'm not sure what a buff is, but it sounds good, and yeah, I think we're buffs.
But the fact is, we love to travel through time to the people, places, and things that played a role in the more than 280-year history of the Lehigh Valley. And especially, we like to hone in on
Well, our 250th anniversary as a nation is coming up
absolutely.
in the coming months, and it might be interesting to let people know that there are connections between our own history locally and our national history.
Totally. And actually, on this episode, we are going to hone in on an iconic site, historic site in the Lehigh Valley, right here in Bethlehem. And that, of course, is, well, first, let me give you a little riddle, Mark.
All right.
Okay, it's 1781. We're in Bethlehem, and we want to catch a glimpse of the man, George Washington. Where do we go?
George Washington, the rock star of his generation.
By 1781 or 82,
War
of course.
hero, father of our country. There could only be one place, Grover, especially in Bethlehem. It was the finest establishment, hostelry known as the Sun Inn.
Yes, right on Main Street, still standing and actually still operating.
Yes, it is. It is. Some people might be surprised that there's a building that old, 1758, I guess, and for the most part,
Right.
still operating as it originally was intended, as a way station and a place of hospitality.
They started building it in 1758, and they officially opened it in 1760. And of course, it was built by the Moravians,
Yeah.
who built everything to last.
Bethlehem was a closed community for almost the first 100 years of its existence. It's a little surprising that under those circumstances that they would build something that seemed to be designed for visitors. But they were smart enough to realize that as much as they wanted to remain off the beaten track, they weren't.
Right.
And occasionally visitors, thirsty visitors, hungry visitors, visitors whose horses need to rest, there was a way to make some money.
That's right. And it was the only one within, 40 miles?
Probably.
At least in a major town.
There were coach stops here and there
Right.
at intervals.
Dotted along the coach roads.
But the Sun Inn was considered the equal to the types of establishments you would expect to find in the large cities like Philadelphia, Boston, Trenton,
Right.
places
right.
like that.
Like Philadelphia had the City Tavern.
Oh, sure.
Which played a big role during the Revolution, and of course the Sun Inn as well. And you mentioned visitors, and the Sun Inn had a tremendous guest list, if you will, including, of course, George Washington and Martha.
All the major movers and shakers during colonial America's period.
Right,
that
leading
period.
up to the Revolution.
Yeah, and there's that old saying, word of mouth, because there was no internet.
Right.
But word spread far and wide that here was a place that if you were anywhere within 20 miles, stop in.
Right. And in fact, even today, you can see the Martha Washington suite at the Sun Inn. And according to the website, the suite was the only suite in the colonies, I think at the time, in an inn or a tavern that was anything like it. I guess you got a room. That was
Right.
it. So this was kind of unique in and of itself, even at that time.
Absolutely.
And I think the guest list also included John Adams. I'm not sure whether Abigail, his wife, was joining him. Ben Franklin.
Alexander Hamilton, and for a while, the Marquis de Lafayette. There was a point in time when he was injured.
Oh, yes. He was
fighting-
wounded at the Battle of Brandywine,
Yes.
right down the road, actually.
And for a short time, he ended up at the Sun Inn, not just as a guest, but convalescing.
Right.
That's a whole other story.
That's a whole other story.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah, we'll get into that during one of our other journeys.
We will.
But, you spoke about, there was no internet at that time. But interestingly enough, a tavern or an inn, such as the Sun Inn, of course, was really not just for eating or sleeping or drinking, but also it was a community center. It was a hub.
Yeah, yeah. In some cases, in some towns, it was a postal facility. In some towns, it was also a courthouse
Right.
for the lower
A meeting
judiciary.
place.
It was a meeting place.
You wanted the news. You couldn't turn on,
Right.
a channel and get the news immediately. This is where you went to share what you knew, what was going on.
Right.
This was especially important as, events led to the revolution.
Right. It's where they got together and talked about what they
Right.
weren't supposed to be talking about, lest the British would be
Yes,
a
a
little
little
angry.
bit of rebellion.
Yeah.
And so these places were very important for so many reasons, other than what they were essentially built for. And the Sun Inn, of course, was one of them.
For a very long time, there existed a legend that the Sun Inn was somehow connected through a subterranean tunnel to Old York Road, which was
Oh, really?
west of that, down where the industrial quarter is.
Right.
And that in the event of hostile Indians or redcoats, any bigwigs who might have been staying there could get on their horse and gallop away to safety. I've never been able to tell if that was 100% true, but it makes a great story.
Right. Now, if you go to the Sun Inn, I think the first floor is the museum itself. And there's the great parlor. Evidently, this is where guests would wait for their room to be ready or their coach to pull up. I don't know if they had valet service in those days.
I don't know.
So these are the kind of things you could still see at the inn.
But they did treat horses, very well because they were such an important part of transportation. So it was a place where you could go and there was a livery stable and your horse could rest or be groomed or have a shoe fixed.
Right.
So it was a full purpose facility.
Yeah.
It really was.
Horses were a prime commodity. I mean,
Oh,
they're like
absolutely.
a car. It was your transportation.
Yeah, it was.
And the other thing is the miraculous thing about the Sun Inn is that it is actually still here because it almost wasn't.
We came very close to losing it through,
Right.
I'd say, indifference.
Indifference.
Not anything malicious, but
Absolutely.
and that's why history is important, because if you know history and understand it,
Right.
you have a better chance of realizing what a gem you have right under your nose. But Bethlehem came very close to having the Sun Inn just obliterated, disappear.
Right. I think in the 1960s, it was ready to be demolished when there was a community activist, a woman who was attending a lecture on the history of the inn.
Right.
And, at the very moment when it was, its fate was almost
She was
it was in question.
The right person was in the right place at the right time, as far as history is concerned. Hughetta Bender was her name, and she gets credit along with former Mayor Gordon Maurer
Right.
for really doing what needed to be done to preserve the Sun Inn, save it, and bring it back, and so we can enjoy it a generation later.
There was a lot of push to knock it down and just put up something modern that would have changed the whole flavor of this historic section.
And that wasn't entirely a bad thing because it came directly, or more or less directly, from the post-World War II philosophy of urban renewal.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
cities were getting federal dollars to clear land so that they could modernize.
Right.
But it wasn't done in a precise way. They would draw a line around a certain area and knock everything down. And that's what almost happened along Main Street in the effort to make things more modern. We almost lost some important history. And if you can imagine a Main Street around the area where the Sun Inn is, with those delightful Victorian-style buildings,
Right.
being modern, like a mall or something,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it would look terrific. I don't know. But think of what we would have lost.
Right. You would have lost the charm. And while charm sounds like, a mediocre feature, right, or quality,
Mhm.
it can mean an awful lot in terms of building, you know,
Everything's
bringing back a place.
everything's connected too,
Yeah,
because if you think about it from the perspective of 60 or 70 years later, would we enjoy the designation today as a UNESCO World Heritage Site
exactly.
had they altered Main Street to the point where it looked uh, homogeneous,
Right.
or like it had McDonald's or
Uh,
Subways or whatever? The uniqueness of Main Street and its architecture and the businesses
Right. The
it
whole economic revival. Uh, this
pivots
was
off of
very
that.
much part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mayor and former Mayor Maurer deserves a lot of credit because he's the one who put the brakes. If you want to know what Main Street would have looked like had he not intervened,
Right.
just look at the lower part of Broad Street between Main and Getter, for example. Are you impressed by the architecture? Probably not.
No.
And I'm not taking anything away from it, but by comparison,
Right.
we would have lost a lot.
Right. So it's, you know, fortune smiled on Bethlehem, and it took courage, and it was a risk.
Yeah, it was.
You know, and you're pushing up against some major forces that
Who wanted it to happen?
wanted, yeah, exactly. And so
Mm.
today, you know, the whole city benefits, and
Mhm.
actually the whole region benefits from what they did, with the foresight that they had, and the courage that they had to push forward with it.
And the historical knowledge that they had, which
Yes.
keyed it. You know, the thing is, really, if you think about it, we the Main Street that we celebrate today, it exists because of the Sun Inn, because that was the first linchpin. That by saving the Sun Inn, everyone recognized historic preservation is more important than urban renewal, and
Right.
that's why we're talking about the Sun Inn today.
Right. And when one historic site is saved, it then kind of leads to others.
Yeah.
It helps create a mentality and an attitude toward
Yeah.
history that helps then lead to preserving what is so important. Because when you go to the Sun Inn and you just touch the walls, just touch some of the artifacts or be near them, you can, you know, this is why we call it time travelers, because we feel like we're back in that time.
Yeah.
And then we feel like, wow, you know, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, right? We always hear that phrase, but it's true.
Yes.
We are not here simply out of thin air. We are here based on generations that came before us. And what we have today is a credit to what they did then.
Mhm.
And we have to be grateful for that. And the way to be grateful is to understand it and appreciate it
And celebrate it.
and celebrate it.
And go back
Exactly.
and look at it as time travelers, like we're going to do.
Right. And then go to the Sun Inn today and have a libation
Mhm.
because alcohol and beer or whatever the beverage of the day was very important because, you know,
Drinking water wasn't quite as
As
reliable as it is now
Right.
today. So drinking spirits,
yes,
including beer, was normal
right. And
and
George
expected.
Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they all had their own recipes. They made it on their
Yeah,
plantations.
Sure.
And they have a distillery there at the Sun Inn now called the Christmas City Distillery,
Yep.
in which you can buy spirits.
Yeah, brandies and flavored whiskeys and drinks.
Right.
And I bought my share of samples, and it's very good.
Right. And the fare at the Sun Inn also, a lot of it is they try to connect it to some of the food from the period. And
Hmm.
and so, you know, it's a holistic approach
Right.
to history, which makes it just all the more
Well,
fascinating.
I think it's great when you have a chance to learn what were people, what was their diet like, what were they eating 250 years ago.
Right.
I think it's very simple to know what they weren't eating.
Right. I'm sure
Probably
processed
most
food
of this, yeah,
or
most of the
not
things we eat.
part of the diet.
But a lot of it was based on the geography of where they were.
Right.
Were they near a stream, like we are,
Monocacy and Lehigh.
right? And there were certain types of freshwater fish that were sure to be on the menu,
Right.
but also pork and
Yeah,
other,
well, Germans, the
absolutely, absolutely.
Moravians, they,
Yep. And vegetables, of course. So they probably eat better than us.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
But the water wasn't as it was. You had to have a little skeptical
Oh,
attitude toward that. So
I think that's one of the main reasons why so much effort was made at brewing and
yes. Oh, there's no doubt about it.
yeah,
Right.
it was a practical solution really in those
Right.
days.
It was also a cultural thing because the immigrants brought this skill and this part of their culture, the culinary part of their culture, with them.
All
Yeah.
immigrants do.
Right.
They do. Yep.
So, there's so much more we could talk about in terms of the Sun Inn and the surrounding history.
Oh, sure.
But we'll get to that in future episodes. Mark, it's been great.
Yeah,
We've got a lot more journeys to take because there's a lot more history to tell.
and there's nothing like bringing people along with us.
That's right.
We hope you people will join us
Absolutely. Yeah, don't go anywhere without us.
without us.
But on that note, take care.